Harry, on one of our previous videos, we got a question that what language did Jesus speak? Can you go ahead and answer that for us, please?
Yeah, well, I'm not a scholar, but I think I have this right. 2,000 years ago, Jesus was 27 years old right now, speaking Aramaic as he went among his people in his work life. On Saturday, the Sabbath, in the synagogue, they read the Old Testament, the law, and the prophets in the Hebrew language. This was a similar language, but not understood really well by the regular people. I have read that translation was provided as needed from the scrolls. So, what was the background? When Abram came to settle in the promised land, now Israel, they spoke the Hebrew language there. So, Abram, Isaac, Jacob, and his sons would all learn that language. Of course, that's where they lived. They left for Egypt for 250 years, but must have kept their language at that time because they lived in the town of the Goshen area, so they had a community of their own. When God gave Moses the law and the book of Genesis, it was written in the Hebrew language, which they kept ever since. The law, the land they conquered was also Hebrew in language. 600 years before Jesus, Nebuchadnezzar carried the people off to Babylon, where they spoke Aramaic. When they returned, they kept this as their street language. Their church language was Hebrew, and all the scholars continued to copy the books in Hebrew. But not everyone returned to Israel. 400 years before Jesus, Alexander the Great conquered the world and brought the Greek language to everybody. Alexander built Alexandria in Egypt, and then he invited the Jews there to prosper, and he gave them full citizenship. They translated their Mosaic books and prophets, our Old Testament, into Greek then, the Septuagint. This is one reason the Jewish faith prospered across the world. Every city had Jews, had the Greek Bible, and it could be read everywhere. In Israel, at Jesus' time, we have Aramaic is the language on the street and in the marketplace. Hebrew, the language for the synagogue and the clergy. Greek, that was the official language across the world, like English now. And Roman was the Latin language used by the soldiers and the government officials. Most of the New Testament would have been written in Greek. Matthew likely wrote in Aramaic, writing to the Jews in Israel. Luke likely did not even know Aramaic. He would have written in Greek for sure. Paul wrote to and from everywhere and also would have written everything in Greek. 100 years later, the world language became Latin. Roman dominance continued for many centuries. Roman rule allowed the gospel to flourish in this time because of the good roads and good government, and that's where we get the Vulgate written in the year 400. That was the official Bible, as you might say, for the church, and that's my story.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot for that, Harry.
Yeah, good.